Shalom. All praises, blessings, glories, honors, and power unto Yahweh, the King of terrors, Bahashim, Yahawashai, Bahashim, Racha, Kodash, and double honors unto my elder apostles and bishop elders of Great Millstone, who taught me this truth, as well of men of like mind. Shalom wa chasad, which means peace and mercy, to the elect of the nation of Israel, whom you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and Israelite foreigners of the seed line of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. To you I say Shalom, beginning with the 144,000 prophets, and Yahweh, the King of terrors, Bahashem, Yahawashai, willing. This lesson is edifying and informative. My name is Quanawath, and this is the book of Revelation, chapter 17, verse 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. In the news, from the Kobasai letter on X, breaking. President Trump announces a 10% tariff on Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the UK, Netherlands, and Finland beginning February 1st. This tariff will be increased to 25% beginning on June 1st. Tariffs will remain in effect until the US reaches a deal to buy Greenland, which it has been for some time now. It is time for Denmark to give back, Trump says, as referenced in the image you brothers and few sisters see before you. This was published yesterday at approximately 11:25 a.m. The U.S. Treasury Secretary Besant, also from the Kobasai letter, says the U.S. must take Greenland because Europe is too weak to ensure its own safety. And that is one of the U.S.'s justifiable reasons as to why it must take / annex Greenland, which is a jurisdiction of Norway, if my memory serves me correctly. Now let's take a listen.
President Trump strongly believes that we cannot outsource our security because, Kristen, let me tell you what will happen, and it might not be next year, might not be in 5 years, but down the road, this fight for the Arctic is real. We would keep our NATO our NATO guarantees, and if there were an attack on Greenland from Russia, from some other area, we would get dragged in. So better now, peace through strength, make it part of the United States, and there will not be a conflict because the United States right now, we are the hottest country in the world. We are the strongest country in the world. The Europeans project weakness. The U.S. projects strength.
Now, as a result of the U.S.'s determination to annex Greenland and its tariffs upon its NATO allies, from the BRICS news, the following NATO countries issue joint statements standing in solidarity with Greenland: France, Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, United Kingdom. Gave the following joint statement by Denmark, Finland, again, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. As members of NATO, We are committed to strengthening Arctic security as a shared transatlantic interest. The pre-coordinated Danish exercise Arctic endurance conducted with allies responds to this necessity. And so Greenland is a jurisdiction, rather, of Denmark and not Sweden. Please forgive me for that error earlier. Right? In fact, to verify that, let's ask Google. So yes, Greenland is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. So that verifies it. Again, forgive me for my error earlier and I'd said that it's a jurisdiction of Sweden. It's actually a jurisdiction of Denmark. And so reading on, it states that the pre-coordinated Danish exercise Arctic endurance conducted with allies responds to this necessity. It poses no threat to anyone. We stand in full solidarity with the Kingdom of Denmark and the people of Greenland, building on the process begun last week. We stand ready to engage in a dialogue based on the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity that we stand firmly behind. Tariff threats undermine transatlantic relations and risk a dangerous downward spiral. We will continue to stand united and coordinated in our response. We are committed to upholding our sovereignty. And that concludes the joint statement by these NATO countries. And so the division between the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns is increasing with the horde that rise upon the beast, which is America, Babylon the Great. And they are beginning to show their increasing hatred for the whore. From the watchers that guru the European Union to suspend trade deal with U.S. following President Trump's tariff threats, Bloomberg reports. So not only did the European Union / NATO countries or allies issued a joint statement, but they also suspended trade deals with the U.S. And not only this, from the Kobasai letter breaking, the EU is preparing up to 93 euros or 93 billion euros in tariffs and other restrictions on U.S. companies in response to President Trump's 10% tariff and demands for Greenland. So we're going to see a trade war between the U.S. and its allies. Expect a busy night ahead for tariff headlines. U.S. stock market futures open in 4 hours. In addition to this, from the BRICS news, French President Macron calls for the EU to use its most potent trade weapon against the U.S. after President Trump's Greenland tariff threat. The Kobasai expands further upon this. France's President Macron calls for the EU to activate its most potent trade weapon against the U.S. after President Trump's tariff threat over Greenland. Macron is now calling for the use of the EU's anti-coercion instrument. If used against the U.S., it would restrict U.S. access to the EU market, potentially blocking U.S. banks from EU procurement and targeting U.S. tech giants. This trade weapon has never been used before, so this would be the first time Europe has ever used such an instrument, especially against its most significant ally, the United States. And so, brothers and sisters, we are witnessing biblical prophecy, which is the division against America, the whore, and her allies, NATO and the EU, the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. And America being an extension of that empire. We are seeing that America's allies are increasing in hatred for America. And so again, this is the book of Revelation chapter 17. This won't be a long lesson. I just wanted to report the news. In fact, before I read Revelation chapter 17, this is from CNBC. Unacceptable. European leaders hit back at Trump's Greenland tariff threats. Trump announced on Saturday that 8 European allies would face escalating tariffs, starting at 10% on February 1st and rising to 25% on June 1st, which we read about earlier on the X post, if a deal is not reached for Washington to buy Greenland. The tariffs target Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and Finland, Trump said. European leaders have hit back, describing the tariff as wrong and unacceptable, and we've seen that they've hit back with tariffs of their own. 93 billion euro, or 93 billion in euros in tariffs. And they also intend on using their so-called anti-coercion instrument against the United States. So we are witnessing great division and hatred between the United States and her allies, NATO and the EU. European leaders have hit back at U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to impose fresh tariffs on them if they oppose his attempt to buy Greenland, describing the ultimatum as completely wrong and unacceptable. Trump announced on Saturday that 8 European allies would face increasing tariffs, starting at 10% on February 1st and rising to 25% on June 1st. If a deal is not reached, so Washington can buy the Arctic territory, which is semi-autonomous and part of the Kingdom of Denmark. And the U.S. also hinted that it would use military force if needs be to annex Greenland. So that's not over the table as well. 8 NATO members' goods sent to the U.S. will face escalating tariffs until such time as a deal is reached for the complete and total purchase of Greenland, Trump stated on his social media platform, Truth Social, on Saturday. The proposed tariffs would target Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and Finland, Trump said. European leaders were quick to react to the latest threat, with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer commenting Saturday that applying tariffs on allies for pursuing the collective security of NATO allies is completely wrong, while French President Emmanuel Macron described them as unacceptable. Europeans will respond in a united and coordinated manner should they be confirmed. We will ensure that European sovereignty is upheld, Macron stated on social media platform X on Saturday. So this is only going to unite Europe against the whore. So this is spectacular stuff, man. Exciting stuff, exciting times, man. Reuters quoted a source close to Macron as saying he was pushing for the activation of the anti-coercion instrument, which could limit access to public tenders in the EU or restrict trade in services in which the US has a surplus with the bloc. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, issued a statement Saturday in which they said the EU stands in full solidarity with Denmark and the people of Greenland. It added that it was committed to further dialogue following talks between Denmark, Greenland, and top US officials last week, which ended without a diplomatic breakthrough. Nonetheless, Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen said Trump's tariff threat had come as a surprise following the constructive meeting with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The European Union has called an emergency meeting which will take place at 16 p.m. London time on Sunday, Reuters reported. Finnish President Alexander Stubb, who, like British PM Keir Starmer, is known to have a good relationship with Donald Trump, called for cool heads and further talks. He warned further tariffs, which could come on top of 15% tariffs on EU exports to the US and the 10% levied on UK exports, would be damaging. However, among allies, issues are best resolved through discussion, not through pressure. Now we're seeing the crumbling, the breaking of defeat that's mixed with clay, iron and miry clay. The great division between America and its allies. European countries stand united. We emphasize the principles of territorial integrity and sovereignty. We support Denmark and Greenland. Dialogue with the United States continues. Tariffs would undermine the transatlantic relationship and risk a dangerous downward spiral. A downward spiral that will lead to the complete destruction / nullification of their transatlantic relationship. Okay, leading to America becoming an adversary of its European allies in the NATO and the EU. And this is all a part of biblical prophecy. So we are living in highly spiritual prophetic times, man. Now there's more, but the point has been read. And with that, let's read Revelation chapter 17, verse 16 again, and then conclude the lesson, Lord is willing. And it reads, and the 10 horns, which the 10 horns represents the EU, right, the EU nations, which thou sawest upon the beast, which the beast is the pagan Roman Empire, which came back in the form of NATO and the EU, with America being an extension of that empire, the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. Thee shall hate the whore, which is America, Babylon the Great, and shall make her desolate and naked. How? By shooting thermonuclear fire upon her, according to biblical prophecy. See the book of Obadiah, see the book of Isaiah, the 13th chapter, the latter end of the chapter. See the book of Jeremiah 49, 50, 51, among many others. Okay? Revelation 9, Revelation 18. And shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. In the NLT, in the NIV, in fact, it says the beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. And all these articles that we had just reviewed exemplifies that. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And so with that, I conclude this lesson. Lord's willing, it has been edifying to the elect of the nation of Israel. This has been another In the News report of current things that are happening across the globe and how they align with biblical prophecy. And so with that, I will say shalom to the elect of the nation of Israel. I'll catch you brothers and few sisters, Lord's willing, in the next. Shalom.